Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is December 16, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Sandow Birk. Where in the heck you calling in from, Sandow?
I'm calling in from my home studio in downtown Long Beach, California.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is it? Wow, we're going straight into heavy things. What is the best thing for a human being? Being happy. I
Yeah,
try to I try to live every day doing something fun.
yeah.
A lot of Most of my life since I was a kid is centered around surfing, and that brings me a lot of joy. And it's immediate, and it's something I do that keeps me in the present and makes me really happy.
Super cool. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Reading, uh, reading, and since I'm a painter, I spend a lot of time alone in a room painting, and I listen to the radio a lot or podcasts or whatever. But reading is my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Magazines and
Yeah, I'm the same way, and especially when you said magazines. Just to veer off the script for a second, did you gravitate towards reading because your parents told you to read? They did it as an example or on your own?
I think on my own. I grew up before the internet, so there was no other distractions besides TV. But I was a big reader since like age 12, and
Yeah.
through my teens, I tried to read like all the classics. Went through a science fiction phase, went through a fantasy phase, read all Dickens and Sherlock Holmes and everything. I really enjoy reading.
It's really cool. So, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Wow. Hopefully to store knowledge. Uh, that's why I gather information. I have a bookshelves, hundreds of books, and I refer to them uh, as
Do you,
sources of knowledge.
do you think this, that was good. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate. I
Yeah.
think inborn in humans to want to know more, to know what's over the next hill when you're walking down the street.
Good metaphor. So, Sandow, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
I don't know what I think about something until I learn enough about it to have an opinion.
Very good. Can humans think without language?
No, no. I speak. I lived for several years in Brazil, so I speak Portuguese fluently, and I speak Spanish pretty well. And I know from speaking two languages that the language itself limits the way that you can look at things. I know I can the differences between Portuguese and English. I can see things that you can't explain in one and you can't explain in another language, and I can see how the actual availability of the words shapes your ability to think and communicate. And I know also from speaking different languages that I often have dreams in other languages, and uh, yeah, you can't imagine without having the words to express it, I think.
Yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
Easy, you paint.
Yeah, that's easy for you to say. You're a hell of a painter. But, I mean, that was beautiful. So, your observations of humans in general, I know it's both and it depends, blah, 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 but are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I personally would say thinking. I
Wow.
I myself am, I think more about things than I feel them, or at least maybe I just don't think about what I feel. So
No, it's good. It's healthy because Sandow, 80% of people say we're more feeling beings, but they say it this way. I think we're more feeling beings. That tells you something right there. And the bottom line is you can't separate thinking from feeling, but we think we can because we invented the words.
well, like I said, I do a lot of surfing, and I've been surfing since I was 11, and I don't even think about surfing. It's just like I
No,
just go do it every couple of days, and then people are like, "Oh, that's so amazing," and I'm like, "Is it really?" It's just
yeah.
sort of mundane to me. I
Well,
don't think much about it.
it's
Huh?
like breathing. It's like breathing. You know, they asked Duchamp at a casual party, like, what you guy goes, what do you do? He goes, I'm a breather. Like that's what you're saying. Like surfing is like breathing for you. You don't do it like consciously. It's sort of like you do it naturally or organically, or it flows.
It's more that it's like a habit. It's like if
Yeah.
I don't go, I
Okay.
notice that I haven't gone for a few days, and then when I do go, I just feel better afterwards. But while
Yeah.
I'm doing it, I don't really think that much about it. I don't think like, "Oh, this is amazing," or
Yeah.
it's just more of a habit.
It's cool. These are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. The first one is thinking a function of the soul?
Is there a soul, first of all? And this is the soul invented by thinking about the soul.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a chicken and an egg. Uh, thinking thinking is the definition of being alive, isn't it? I guess for a human.
Yeah.
So thinking is necessary.
Yeah. The second Turing questions is, can machines think?
Ooh, I don't think machines can think, but I was listening to the New York Times podcast just this morning when they were talking about this new breakthrough last week about an artificial intelligence that was really remarkable and sort of semi-frightening
Yeah.
about how it's exponentially gotten better all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yep. Do you more pursue meaning or more pursue happiness?
Happiness, for sure, in my daily life. Yeah, I've I spend a lot of my time just trying to have a nice day. And I've got small kids that I really enjoy spending time with, and I put all that uh, in front of career or money or anything. Just having a good day with my family.
Beautiful. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
I think it's bubbling away. Yeah, because like aren't dreams uh, your consciousness working away while you're not thinking about it? Isn't
Yeah.
your brain's thinking while you're not aware that you're thinking?
Yep. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of light by far. To see how long it took me to answer that question. Light would have been halfway to the moon by then.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Oh, this is too vague of a question.
Well, I can zoom in and say you don't have to utilize the word new, and it's more, what tool do you gravitate towards? And it doesn't have to apply to, any of these cute quotes I put before the questions. You don't have to put them into that context. You can put in the context you want.
Well, since I'm an artist and that's how I basically think about things, throughout my career, I haven't tried to think of a way to make art that's never been done before, that's not really interesting to me. I would say I use the methods of art making that already exist and try to use them to comment on art itself. So I
Yeah.
would be using the tools of the master, I guess.
Yeah. What new toy do you suggest?
What new toy to have fun with?
Yeah.
Get a surfboard.
Right.
You buy them once, and then you can every time I go surfing, it's free. I don't have to buy a lift ticket. I don't have to ask any permission. Just put some coins in the parking meter and run out there.
Really beautiful. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Just finances. As an
Yeah.
artist, that's always your biggest concern. You know, everything's going okay, but I just hope it keeps going okay.
Yeah.
Nothing unexpected happens. No illness.
Yeah. Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race, sort of like a radar system. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we might be able to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Sandow, I asked you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, I think in general, there's a lot of romance about what artists are in society and what they can do and what they're doing and them being the radar of something. But as a painter, like, who really pays attention to artists? You know,
Yeah.
people go see my art show, a couple hundred, you know, I post something on Twitter and 1 million people can see it. So I don't know. It's nice to believe that artists are really crucial to society, but as far as painting, I wish it was more important. I wish more people paid attention. I always feel like I do the best I can and put it out there and try to get as many people to see it as I can, and I don't know what else to do beyond that.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
I wouldn't say, I don't want to speak for all artists. Maybe some art making practice can be breaking moral obligations as the foundation of what they're doing. I try to, for me, making artworks is so time consuming that when I'm finished, I want it to say something that I believe in and something that I think is worthwhile. I don't want to spend 3 weeks making a painting that at the end is just decorative or something. It has to have some kind of meaning. It has to have a message to me. To me, painting is a way of communication.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Old ideas. Yeah, new ideas are always interesting, and you turn them around and ponder them. There's a lot of bad old ideas, and they are not going away.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Oh yeah, I can remember. I can remember something my parents told me happened when I was like 2 or 3. When I was in the backseat of a car that was moving, and I opened the door and fell out, and I can picture
Whoa.
it onto a gravel road in Michigan. Yeah, and they can't believe that I can remember it, but I can picture the whole thing.
Well,
Back
was
in the day, they had car seats for kids.
but was the car moving really fast or just slow?
No, I don't think I was really injured, but I remember, like, I can remember seeing the ground, and I can remember it was nighttime. I can remember the gravel. I can see it really clearly in my head.
Wow. It's meant more.
Shows my parenting skills of my mother. Hopefully
It
she doesn't
is
watch.
memorable. Say it again.
Hopefully, I don't think my mom's watching YouTube live.
Well, by hearing you talk and seeing your art, I can attest she did something right. Dude, you're an amazing artist, and you really articulate. I appreciate you getting this, how we're doing this. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Blessing. Yeah. Especially the
Tell
older
me.
you get. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I've lived my life doing everything I wanted to do mostly, and I love thinking back about it.
Yeah.
uh, Especially as it comes to surfing. When I was like 20, I was a good surfer, and I didn't want to get a job. I didn't want to start a career. I didn't even want to go to college. All I wanted to do was like go travel around the world and surf the best waves on earth when I was at the peak of my athleticism. So that's basically what I did all my 30s and 40s. And looking back, I mean, I still surf a lot now, but I'm slower. My knees aren't so good, and I'm just
Yeah.
so happy I got to go to surf South Africa when I was 32 years old, or Indonesia or Australia. I've
Yeah.
had wonderful experiences, and I love thinking about them all the time.
Yeah. The traveling part of surfing in your career is amazing. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Ooh, in my immediate family, like we talked about right before we came on, my family was from Ohio and Michigan, and I moved to California when I was 6. So, I grew up skateboarding and surfing and hanging out at the beach, and um, my parents had no idea why I was doing those things. So uh, they weren't supportive of that. And when I wanted to go to art school, no one in my family was artistic. They weren't very excited about that idea, although they came around. Uh, so I don't know. I sort of forged my own way in my 20s as far as my family, but the people that I met were really influential. Traveling companions, being on the road, and just meeting people that would say, "Look, you can just travel around and be a surfer." And I was like, "Really? You can just do that? Oh yeah, you can do that. Just do some odd jobs." And hitchhike to Mexico, and those people were really inspiring to me. And then when I got into art school, I didn't even know art school existed until I went to college. And the teachers I had were really inspiring. Just the fact that for me to learn that you could even be like have a studio and paint and make a living off having art shows was amazing. And as soon as I found out that's what I wanted to do.
Were you raised a particular religion?
No. When I was really little, my mom would take me to Presbyterian church a few times for the holidays or something, but I was never interested in religion, and my parents weren't really insistent on anything.
Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I don't think God exists, so
Very, very good.
so he can
Do
say whatever he wants.
Yeah, he can say whatever he wants. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Oh, evil people exist. Yeah, I don't think there's an outside force of evil in a cloud that floats around and goes into someone's body. Evil thoughts come around through their own thinking and learning and conniving.
Yeah. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question, Sandow, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you react to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
It depends on the scale of the enemy. If it's an annoying person in high school, you can ignore them. If it's a force of government, you have to acknowledge it. I think it has to be put into each specific instance.
Yeah. But say your kid came home from school and said there's a bully. How would you advise them to deal with the bully?
That actually happens. Usually we say stay away from them,
Yeah.
uh, avoid them. Yeah. So I guess don't acknowledge them when
Yeah.
possible.
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
That's funny. I did not know James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. I read James Joyce. I'm a fan of his. Uh, well, ask him if he doesn't want to watch a movie, but he wants to go write his fictional novels. He's like contradicting himself, isn't he?
Well, he's what I learned from Frank Zappa is embrace contradiction. But I should say allegedly. I mean, he started Volta Cinema. I know you surfed in Dublin or in Ireland, and I'd love to talk about Joyce with you as we go on. But I mean, the basic question is, I mean, you can put it into the context you want, but it's what's the function of art?
Well, the function of art is to communicate and to communicate things that aren't put into words very well. At least that's what I think of visual arts. Um, they can be more complex. You can convey ideas that contradict each other. You creating a fictional world that is symbolic of something in order to convey an idea, I guess. That's what I would say.
Well, what do you think the motive of the cave artist was?
That's a good question. I would assume it had. I don't know. I'm no expert, but I would assume religious sort of ideas of bringing good spirits, maybe making the. I guess putting symbols that would hopefully bring them better hunting the next day or something. But then I guess some of the images might be telling stories of battles and things. So in which case they'd be recording their own history, which goes back to earlier we said the impulse of humans is to remember and write down their history or make a record of it.
Yeah.
So
Well, Marshall McLuhan has a great line where they go, "We do art, quote, to show what our world is made of."
that's good.
Sandow, what is our world made of?
Well, the obvious is physical things, but you're asking, you're trying to get me to say, oh, it's made of love and hope and adventure.
I'm not trying to get you to say anything. I welcome you to say anything, but that was beauty because that was a pure example of how I approach this whole thing. It's me and you versus the questions and how they're worded. Like I want to work with you and shift the wording. Like that was the first time I asked that question. And it was fun because I'm not trying to get you to say anything, but it is a funny thing because it implies what you were saying is it implies you want me to say it's filled with love and hope. That was, I mean,
Yeah.
that says a lot about you. That was a beautiful answer then, right? When you say yeah.
In actuality, the world is made of rocks and water.
That, but you being a socially conscious artist, I mean, you tackle social issues And it's pretty heavy. Let me just follow it up, because see, I'm just working on that question. And I appreciated you being the first person I asked it to, because this artist and musician, Blue Jean Tyranny, he actually played drums in a band where no, he played in a blues band in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Iggy was their drummer, Iggy Pop. So Blue Jean Tyranny spent years in the Ann Arbor Film Festival, and he's an avant-garde composer. And he says music is a means of deeply informing myself that there's another world. Music is my way of being in the world. Again, that's sort of romanticizing, and it's a nice way to put words together. But I'm curious, is art your way of being in the world? Is there any similarity with what he says? Deeply informing myself that there's another world, and it's my way of being in the world.
Yeah, art is the way that I'm in the world. It's the way I see the world. Everything I look at and think about is through the lens of art and politics and how they combine. Yeah, I think about art even when I'm not thinking about art, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be my way of being in the world.
Your way, beautiful. So where was it? You had that, what did you say, 30s and 40s surfing the world. And then you're going to college. Where was it where did you grow up going to art galleries and art museums and studying art history, and you go, that's what I want to do? What was the tipping point when you said, I want to pursue being an artist?
Going to art school. I didn't go to museums too much. Like my parents weren't big art lovers or anything when I was a kid, but we did go to museums occasionally, history museums, and we'd go see museums. So it wasn't unfamiliar. But no, I didn't go to galleries when I was young. When I went to art school, I just couldn't believe that you could spend your whole day making stuff and talking about art all day. And then I immediately wanted to be in that world. And then I think by the end of the first year, I just said, all I want to do is be a working studio artist, however that can happen.
Yeah. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Intention is the most important thing. I think intention defines what's art. What did you intend it to be? That's the difference between a pile of rocks and a pile of rocks in an art gallery. There's a different intention behind it, and intention is everything. So intention is everything.
Yeah. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer, your art viewer, when you're making your art?
Constantly. I always know when I'm making something, I always know where it's going to be, what show it's going to, what's the size of the room, what's going to be next to it. How can I create a bigger impact by arranging things, by doing bigger, smaller paintings? Where can they place them? I think of my exhibitions as projects, and I think of them as the whole exhibition is unified, and how can it be an experience? And so I'm always thinking about what's someone else going to think when they see it. What are they going to see first when they walk in the door? What are they going to see last when they go out? That's all really important to me.
What do you think it is about your art that has caused people to buy it and show it in museums?
Well, hopefully it's meaningful. That would be the simplest thing. I think my work is its strength is that it tries to tie things from the past into contemporary social issues. So it shows how what's happening today isn't just happening today. It's because of what came before, or it's the result of things that came earlier. And I think that's what I try to do.
Yeah, Wyndham Lewis says artists live in the present, like be here now, and write a detailed history of the future.
Yeah, I guess some people do. Yeah, I'm wary of using all these generalities about what art does or what
Yeah.
what it means. People like ask me, you know, paint, people that don't know art, are interested in what painting can do, and I guess my answer is always like painting can basically do whatever writing can do, and
Yeah.
writing can be a dictionary, it can be a poem, it can be a shopping list, it can be a note, it can be a novel. So painting can do all those things too, and it doesn't have to do them all simultaneously, and they don't all have to have grandiose aspirations at the outset.
No. They asked Robert Frost, the poet, what does this poem mean? And he said, you mean you want me to say it worse?
Say it worse.
Yeah.
He's just saying the most beautiful way he can, I guess.
Yeah. And it's like, what have I, but,
Where do you get these funny quotes?
I read, and I read and collect. Yeah. But actually, Leo Bersani studied the great symbolist poet Mallarmé, and he said, the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. So I'm curious if that applies to your art making. Does the crises which threatens your art making sustain it?
I didn't know there's a crisis that's threatening my art
Right,
making.
right, right. And again, it's more like the words that he means are a little radical. It's more like it's not the crises, it's that you look at a blank piece of canvas or
Yeah.
you look at a blank piece of paper and go, where do I go? So rather than calling that a crisis, the challenge that instead of saying threatens, the challenge that commands you to make your art sustains your art making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes painting to me engaging is it's problem solving.
Yeah.
From the minute when it's a white canvas, you have to figure out how to start. As soon as you make one mark, then it just becomes a puzzle of, okay, well, what's the next mark and what's the next mark and how do the marks relate to each other? And pretty soon the whole thing's filled up and you're done. That's how easy it is.
Yeah. Well, really saying solving is great, Sandow, because back to Duchamp said, there's no solution because there's no problem.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I would say that's somewhat denial because, you've tackled these political issues. You've tackled, inner city violence, graffiti, all types of things that people say are problems or are challenges.
Wars.
Yeah.
Humans.
How do we keep our governments from going to war?
Oh, geez. If I knew, I'd be working for the president. I have no idea. Ask Putin, man. He started that whole thing for no reason.
Yeah. Well, Utah Phillips, great folk singer and labor activist, said anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Depends again on what. Depends if you're talking about in the World Cup, then the ref gets to do it.
Yeah,
If you're talking about what I get to paint in my painting, then I get to do it. If you talk
yeah,
about who says what side of the street you drive on, I guess the transportation department gets to do it. It's all
yeah,
relative.
yep. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Aren't they the same thing? I'm trying to think when they're not the same thing. I have a responsibility to get my kids to school, and it's the right thing to do. They seem similar to me.
Yeah.
Metaphors.
And what's the difference between rebellion and revolution?
Scale. Revolution would be much bigger. It would involve many people. I think rebellion can be my kid saying he doesn't want to take a bath. And that's one person not against something, but a revolution seems to me to mean something large with multiple people.
Yeah. I know you tackled the Rodney King uprising, or some people call riots, and it's an immense issue because I saw 5 documentaries that were made over 10 to 20 years after it happened.
Oh, yeah.
And it really gave me a chance to understand the situation more. And it is like rebellion is, to me, when people sense that something is wrong. And revolution is when people sense there's something wrong and they have a new way. It's like re-evolution. Like, I have a new way where we could do this.
That's
So yeah, but I'm curious on what is the roots of your, either the way your parents raised you or your sense of being politically aware in your painting. Like, why talk about your painting about the Rodney King uprising, or that the issues that and what was your your motive in the long run, like to get it out of your system, or to, you know, where did it come from within yourself? Yeah.
two answers. Well, I would say most of my politics or my way of looking at the world comes from my travels. I spent a lot of time in Latin America, and I went to El Salvador when the war was going on. I've been, I lived in bad neighborhoods in different cities. I've been an illegal alien in 2 different countries. Traveling and getting to know people and seeing how other people live really shaped me in the ways I think about the world in general. But as far as that series of paintings, I did a year of school in Europe. I did a semester in Paris and a semester in England. And coming from LA, I was so impressed at the like French Romantic painting, the enormous paintings of battles and Napoleonic wars and things that I saw in Paris. And they really, learning about this time in the late 1800s when painting was so important and people would like stand in line and pay to go see paintings. And I was like, wow, I want to make paintings like that. And then when I eventually came back to LA and started doing paintings, I was painting my neighborhood and I was painting things going on. And I was living in West Adams at the time. I was painting drug deals and police cars and things. And then when the riots came about, the sense of universal sense of injustice at the Rodney King verdict was outrageous. And then when the riots actually happened, it was suddenly, it seemed to me in my late 20s that I was like, I was living in momentous times when things were changing and when Los Angeles was the center of the world, when we were all fighting for the good fight for righteousness. And I thought this is what I have to paint. This is my moment of what the French Revolution was previously. So that's how it came about.
Yeah. Well, this thinker Nassim Taleb says games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who a hero is and who is not. So,
That
you
guy
know,
doesn't play sports.
he doesn't what?
He doesn't play sports, I can tell.
Right. Well, the question was rooted is competition innate in us? Is being competitive innate or invented? But when I said that quote to someone, they told me villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And, it's like Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, says when a criminal gets caught, do they go, oh, I did something morally or socially wrong? Or do they go, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day and I got caught?
Yeah.
So the basic question is, does punishment work?
No, I wouldn't. Not to the extent that we do it in this country. For sure, it doesn't. It doesn't even deter people from doing things.
Yeah.
No, I would say incarceration doesn't work in general as a concept. But on the other hand, it's necessary. Some people can't be roaming around. So there's all these conundrums. But competition, I think, is inherent to human beings.
Yeah.
As far as like in sporting events and who can run the fastest and throw the ball better than somebody else.
Yeah. You think that's innate in us?
I do, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, look at kids. 3-year-olds will just one will start running, the other will start trying to run faster.
Yeah.
No one told them to do that.
Yeah. But it's interesting. One line that stood out is when you said you saw these people standing in line to see these paintings.
No, I didn't see them. That's what we were reading about
Yeah, you were reading about it. Yeah. And
yeah.
it's interesting because, like, how do you get people to go stand in line to see art nowadays? It's like, yeah, you put on a Van Gogh light show, and people go to see Van Gogh presented in a different way.
Yeah.
And does that get people to stand in line and see art? And then what does it do in the long run? But my thing with art is that, and this, how the religious and the governmental people were the supporters of art,
Yeah.
and so it's like, I come from the experimental film world, and we just put this question in that regard. What are the services and disservices of marginalizing art? It's generally the privileged, or I call them rich art kids, who develop an aesthetic and dominate the art world. So any comments on that marginalization of art, that it's not, if you're addressing political issues and inner city issues, why is it being consumed, or, people are seeing it who are not of that ilk?
Well, that's beyond my control. I mean, when I had a studio on West Adams in the Crenshaw district, and I would just have the door open, and people would come in and see it in my neighborhood, just passersby. And I used to just I would be working on a painting and about to paint a figure, and I'd say, what clothes should they be wearing? And I would say to myself, I'm going to open the door, and the first person that walks by, I'm going to put those clothes on the person in my painting. So they would have like Bart Simpson t-shirts and Nike shoes and low pants,
Yeah.
and I would have those people come see as often as I could.
Yeah.
But once it goes into the galleries, it's I guess I'm playing in a system that I don't have much control over.
Yeah.
I mean, you make movies, you still have to show it in the movie theater.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're talking about. And it's like, how much does the means of getting people to stand in line is part of the art form? It's like a collaborative. It's like you with Earl McGrath, being a studio helper and then slyly booking your own show, and it worked. And he says, "Yeah, go ahead."
Yeah, well, he was a good guy. He really enjoyed pranks and things like that. So I think he just let me do it because he thought it was funny.
Well, it's back to you. One of your motives early on you spoke about is having fun, and I think that's what he was about, is having fun. It reminded me of Yoko Ono did a Fluxus art piece where she listed a show of hers in New York at a gallery that didn't exist to see if the New York Times would list it. And they did. And so what her piece of art was, the listing in the New York Times.
Yeah.
That to me, that was brilliant. That was a prank, and it was Fluxus, and it was Dada, and it worked. I spoke with Michael Apted 40 years ago, and I asked him, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast?
That's
and most people,
I've wondered that same thing.
say it again.
That's a great question. I wonder that same thing. They have every 2 seconds a cut to something else.
Yeah, let me suss it out, because I love to get your thoughts on this. And most people don't know that rapid montage was invented in 1922 by Abel Gance in France, but it flourished in the 80s because of MTV, to the point that Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. And I asked this with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Oh, I don't know. Right. Everything's coming faster. I think we take in things faster and in smaller bites. I don't know if that's better for our brains. That would take a scientist to tell me. But I mean, yeah, you don't read 10-page articles on your phone. You read little 2-paragraph stories. So I think, yeah, obviously things are coming at us faster. We're taking them in faster. I don't know if it's better for us.
Is it literally possible to multitask?
I guess, yeah, in some sense, but I don't know that it results in doing better at any of the multiple things you're doing at once.
Yeah. McLuhan talked.
You
Yeah. Go
can
ahead.
you can talk on the phone and be cooking at the same time.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
make your cooking better.
Yeah. McLuhan talked about everything humans invent extends some humanness, or he called it a human sensorium. So knife and fork extend our teeth. Clothing extends our skin. Even non-tangible, like religion or philosophy, could be an extension of consciousness. What does the paintbrush extend for you? What humanness?
Speech. I'm creating images that speak for me when I'm not there, or that say things that I'm not fully putting into words, or maybe I don't even know exactly what they mean. But yeah, it would be speech, communication.
Yeah. No, that's good, because my friend Duncan Eckelson in Austin, Texas, he's like become one of my best friends over the last 3 years, because we attended Finnegan's Wake Reading Club online together by James Joyce. And then he got me into another reading group on Dante. And he was, I've been aware of your art for years, and it was just like, you've got to see this Dante project by Sandow. And I was like, oh yeah. Well, then I reached out, and I'm really appreciating you talking with me today. And I thank Duncan for connecting us. And, I'm curious on why specifically you pick certain things to do art on when they are literature, because if you're saying the paintbrush extends speech for you, then you have this background in history. I can tell that what constitutes doing the Quran or doing Dante, and why in the heck haven't you done Finnegan's Wake yet?
I haven't made it past the second chapter of Finnegan's Wake, and I've tried multiple times.
Well, the thing is, Sandow, I'll tell you right now, you have to read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people. You can't read it by yourself, even aloud.
Holding a glass of whiskey in front of a peat fire.
Yeah, but you can't do it aloud even with yourself. It has to be with a group of people. It's like a clarion call. It's a hootenanny, or it's a bar, singing Pogue songs in a bar together. That's what it is. But anyways, the question basically is, how do you zoom in on Dante or Quran? What is it that informs you on a particular literature project?
Well, I have answers for both of those. Dante sort of happened by accident, and I fell into it because I found a old book in a used bookstore that had all the illustrations done by Gustave Doré, and I loved the pictures so much. I just bought the book, and I had never read the Divine Comedy, and that it just sort of grew from there. I started reading it. I started thinking, I could reimagine this. I could do images based on this that talk about our times. So that project just sort of grew. Most of my projects just sort of grow.
Yeah.
But the Quran was much more thought out. It started from my own curiosity. The project I did before the Quran was a 2-year-long project to do a series of giant prints and paintings about the war in Iraq, which was going on at the time, and I was really upset about it. And just really paying attention, listening to the radio, reading the newspaper back when the newspaper used to show up at my front door. And I was really upset about it, and constantly listening to the discussion in popular media and in the TV and the radio, people talking about Islam, after 9/11 is saying things like, is Islam a violent religion? Is it fundamentally at odds with Western civilization? Is it this? Is it that? And I was listening to all this, and I just started thinking to myself, wait a second, I've been to Islamic countries many times. I think I counted 10 or 11 different trips I'd been to Islamic countries. I said, I've been to these places. I've met these people. I've eaten this food. I've had fantastic experiences. None of what's going on in this conversation seems accurate to me. And I said, I'm sick of people on the radio telling me what Islam is. I'm going to find out for myself. And I went to Barnes & Noble and bought a copy of the Quran and just started reading it, and remarked it was, as you might know, the Quran is completely familiar if any American picks it up. It's the story of Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and Jesus and Mary and Abraham and Isaac. It's all these stories that you've heard. And the Quran was remarkable. And so from there, I just thought, I thought Americans need to read the Quran, or at least read a chapter of the Quran, at least have some inkling of what the Quran says, and how can I make that happen?
Yeah.
Everyone should, pick up a bit of the Quran at the library and just read a little bit of it. It's not anything that you can't get your head around.
Yeah. It's like, to me, it seems as your motives are to open up people's thinking, where they have these blinders on and there's more to it. We call that comprehensive awareness. When you study patterns, which I think you got from being interested in history, you're a pattern recognizer, you're a dot connector, and then you get a bigger picture view. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Man, all your questions are either ors.
Yeah. And again, you
Conviction.
don't have to answer the question. It's just jumping off, a jumping off. In fact, you would love this. A lady about a half a year ago said, I go, is it more this or more that? She goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. So again, yeah, it's more like, what do you gravitate towards more in general philosophy of life?
Conviction is essential. You have to have a conviction into towards doing something or believing in something, and then compromises usually, I guess, almost always necessary too. So I would say both.
Yeah, that's fine. Sandow, where'd you get your work ethic from?
I don't know. I work pretty hard. I enjoy working. If I do some kind of work in the studio every day, 7 days a week, and if I don't, I feel like I'm not that happy sitting around. I like to do stuff. I don't like to go on vacation and sit in the chair. I have to go do something.
But do you think you got it from the way your parents raised you or on your own, this work ethic?
Oh, I think on my own.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why. It's just how I am. I just like to be doing something all the time.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third?
Ambition, number one. Skill, number two. Luck, number three.
T.S. Eliot says poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
English.
Yeah, metaphorically, what dude, if you can crack yourself up, that's the highest art form, is when you can crack yourself up. No, I appreciate that.
Not English.
And again, you speak other languages too, but it's more like metaphorically, what form is your inner consciousness
in? What form? I don't know what form. Sometimes rage, unfortunately.
Rage. Wow, that's heavy, because I just don't see you as rage. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
you use the energy that it creates to make something,
yeah,
or to do something, or to go into the streets or write something or paint something, or
yeah. Two of my film heroes have this mantra, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, the great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Again, I know it's a stupid question. It's both and it depends, but just your general thoughts. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever culture, technologies, and environments are dominant?
Oh, in my case, it's a vehicle. In my case, it's a vehicle. It doesn't just come to me. When I was like 12 years old, I tried to play an instrument briefly, and I didn't have any of that born in me musicality, that anything just came to me. It was always a struggle. It was never for me. But in the stuff I make, yeah, it's intentional. It's a vehicle. It doesn't just flow through.
It does not, or it does?
No, I mean, I guess sparks of inspiration come unexpectedly, but then they have to be acted upon. They have to be thought
Yeah,
out. I get a lot of ideas in the water or at a stoplight.
yeah,
Those moments when you're not really thinking about thinking, and then you'll just bing, you get some idea. But then that's just the start, and then there's a lot of work that comes after that.
yeah. Well, two things came out of that. But let's follow up with that question first: is can art making be egoless?
No, to be egoless, you'd have to be outside of yourself, and I don't see. Not in my case, not in my experience, it can't.
Yeah.
Maybe like you were quoting the jazz musician who can just close his eyes and feel it flow through him, but that's not anything in my personal experience.
And then when you were 12-year-old, your struggle with the playing the music, like learning the instrument, but somehow you learn to paint because you're a good painter. Yeah, I mean, you're really good painter. How, there was something there, like you says, well, I can't develop that skill strumming a guitar maybe or playing a drum, but I can develop it with a paintbrush.
Yeah, I guess. I think painting is painting and drawing are learned techniques. You just have to practice a lot. Like I guess like playing the guitar, but um, I don't think of myself as being a good or a bad painter. I just think of myself as having good or bad ideas, and
I see. That's interesting. Yeah.
the
Is
actual painting part is
yeah.
just finishing it out.
Yeah, my friend in music says the three T's: technique, theory, and taste. You can learn the technique, like you've learned the technique. You can learn theory, like in music chords or, color combinations or perspective. How does one acquire taste?
Oh, exposure to thing. I think
Yeah.
uh, you know this has come up before when I talk to people that don't know art or something. Like, how do you know? Well, it's like you can ask anyone, was that a good movie or a bad movie? And they always have an opinion. And that's
Yeah.
because they've seen 10,000 movies and
Yeah.
then they know what to compare it to. If you go look at 10,000 paintings, then you can compare paintings to paintings.
Yeah.
That's what.
Now that's the exposure is the answer I get the most. It's very interesting. But the word taste goes to this gut thing, like what's inside you. And Stravinsky has a great line: most people don't know what they like what they know. So if all you give people is, you know, uh, Banksy and Picasso, they'll go, who's your favorite artist? And they'll go, well, the ones I know. But
Yeah.
what about, somebody you don't know? So is perception reality?
Yes. It's the reality for yourself. If you're not perceiving it, then it's not, you wouldn't know it's there.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life may be pointless? I'm not saying life is pointless. I'm saying, why is it so hard for humans to consider the possibility that it might be pointless?
Oh, I find it really easy to consider it being pointless. I assume that probably is. That's no struggle for me. Uh, I think the point of life is to be happy or to experience every moment and make every moment worthwhile. And maybe, yeah, I wonder. Maybe you want to leave something to the people that come behind you. I think, like 400 years ago, they didn't know there was dinosaurs. Now we know there's dinosaurs, and in 200 years, they're going to know more about dinosaurs. So this
Yeah.
gradual collective increasing of knowledge, I think, is important in life. The worst thing I think about dying is like, oh man, I'm gonna miss so many things.
Yeah,
I'm, I'm gonna miss them walking on Mars. I want to see that.
it's good. No, it's very interesting because they've recently said how American Indian indigenous cultures are planning for 7 generations down the line, you know, like they're trying to be aware of what they do and how it's going to affect generations that follow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we should be doing that with climate change.
Yeah.
Uh, so what's the point? Once again, the indigenous people are smarter than the average person. That seems pretty obvious. Let's follow in their lead and think 7 generations down the road.
Yeah. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Not that I can think of. Believed in an impossible thing. Lewis Carroll would make up a word for it too.
He would.
I can't think of anything impossible that I've thought of this week.
Sandow, tell me one major element of your creativeness, your art making, that's changed, and one major element that stayed the same in the years you've been doing it.
Well, what stayed the same is the way that I make things conceptually is still based on going through art history and trying to tie threads from the past to the present. So that stayed the same. What's changed? One thing that I learned to do was printmaking. I never studied printmaking. I don't know anything about printmaking, and I got invited to work with printmakers, and that has become a whole new aspect of the way I work.
Yeah. Great. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
A weakness. I don't know. I'm trying to think emotionally or something. I don't know. I'm thinking. I can't think of one.
No words. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
Probably patience. I think women are more patient, less impulsive. I'm married, so um, my wife seems to have a higher tolerance for anything, whether it's something in the external world and politics or dealing with our kids. Patience, it might be imposed because women have less political power or something, so they put up with more for so long, maybe. But I would say patience.
It's a
It's
great
really
word.
it's still generality. It's
Yeah, but how many years you been with your wife?
21.
How do you explain the longevity?
Uh, Friendship, where we really get along. We work together. We like the same things. Um, I think, yeah, she's my best friend, and we work on projects together. So we're thinking about the same things all the time. We're in the same line of work. Um, One person has idea, and the other person has a complementary idea that helps it along, and we're on the same page about things.
And what have you learned raising children? What's something that's, pre having children and post? What do you think you've learned about life in general?
Well, I didn't have kids till I was quite older. I had a son when I was 51, so my wife's younger than me. I didn't really think I was going to have kids for most all them up to my late 40s, and then I thought kids would be a burden, especially doing so much traveling and not making so much money being a visual artist. But having had kids, uh, I think I've learned how happy they can make you, how wonderful it is to have kids,
Yeah.
and how it's been so great to, I was like 50 years old, and suddenly I'm like rereading books that I read when I was like 4, and then just like a window back in time, and it's been really remarkable. They also make life seem to go so much faster because like between 30 and 40, you're like, it just seems like everything's kind of going the same. But when you have a kid 30 to 40, they're like in diapers or they're 10 years old. And you're just like, wow, that was, now we look back and say, oh, that was 5 years ago. The kids couldn't even walk back then. Now they can ride bikes or something. So you see the time just seems to fly so much faster. They're really markers of time.
That's amazing. So you're saying the activity of being with a kid and doing things, time moves faster, or how does time move faster with kids? Yeah, as opposed to not having kids.
Well, my daughter grew 3.5 inches in 1 year. I mean, that's
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
just like you don't grow anything when you're 35 years old, and then suddenly here's a thing next to you that's growing like so fast, and it's like time seems to be going really fast, like those movies of plants growing in fast motion.
Yeah.
Like my kid didn't know how to count to 100, and now is like learning multiplication. You're like, that seemed to have gone really fast. It was like 2 years ago you didn't even know how to count. They just go fast.
Yeah, there's a joke I'm fond of. The kid gets to the age where they realize that their parents have jobs, that they go to work and earn a living and make money. And so the dad is an art teacher. And the kid says, what do you do for a living, Dad? What's your job? He says, I teach people how to draw. And the kid goes, you mean they forgot?
That's good.
So it is amazing. I'm back to, you're a skilled painter. These landscapes, that look like these, Turner seascapes with surfers in them. There was something that you found that enabled you to learn how to execute the paintbrush to do something specific.
Yeah.
And that was just by going to class and doing over the years, having the teachers that guided you.
No, it was self-taught. When I went to art school, they didn't really teach you how to actually physically paint. They taught you how to talk about painting, how to think about painting. I think I just learned to paint by practice and by copying, by looking at old paintings and trial and error. But there wasn't a lot of actual teaching how to paint in painting class in art school.
Yeah. There's a line, Sandow, that goes, you create what you resist. In fact, Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So I'm just curious your thoughts on this. You create what you resist. I'm not saying you, Sandow. I'm saying one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
I suppose so. Yeah. I like this conversation where you have these whole paragraph long questions, and my answer is yes.
Well, I'm definitely a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure. But it's like these people who've interviewed you online, they do just the opposite, and it's just sort of this thing is like, well, you being a fan of James Joyce, I'm curious what attracted you to Joyce, more so Ulysses or his earlier stuff, because
The stuff you can actually read, like Dubliners and Portrait of the Artist.
those are the ones you're more gravitate towards.
Well, those were the first ones I read, and then Ulysses. I didn't make it through Ulysses. I ended up reading a whole book about Ulysses, which was much more understandable.
Well, what book was that? Do you
Oh,
remember?
I don't remember. It's been 20 years
Yeah,
ago, but it was like it walked you through, like
yeah,
Reader's Guide 2 or something.
yeah,
And then Finnegan's Wake. I can't even put.
yeah.
But I spent a lot of time in Ireland. So when you're in Ireland, you want to read the Irish writers because you're in the landscape that they're writing about. So, he's the king of them all. And then I've read all the contemporary ones. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but
Well, it's funny because McLuhan said that his biggest influence was Finnegan's Wake, and he said that artists dream awake. That's what Finnegan's Wake's about. Everyone has these enormous capability to create a scenario in the middle of the night when they're sleeping. But artists, and not to sound elitist, artists can also do this while they're awake. They dream awake. So have dreams played a role in your creative process?
not really. I don't. No, I don't pay that much attention to my dreams. No, my process is more above the waking consciousness and step by step. I'm not. I don't.
Yeah, that's like, how do you find peace of mind?
In the water,
Yeah.
being outside, being in the water, floating around, looking at fish by my feet. I really enjoy being in the water. It's just really necessary for me.
Yeah. I love it too. These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in a few words. First one, who started it all?
I don't know.
Are we going to make it?
I think we're gonna make it in some form.
Where do we put it?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's all right. Who's cleaning it up?
The following generations are going to clean it up.
5th one is it serious?
Yeah, it's serious. Yes, it's serious.
We got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate this, Sandow. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh, have fun. Have
Yeah.
fun. Yeah. I look back and just so happy that I spent my younger time having fun all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
And
you forget?
worry less. Worry less and have more fun.
Oh yeah, worry less. Well, what's the difference? Because I'm always interested in people's. What's the difference between worry and concern?
Oh, I don't know, but you know, I just wish someone had told me when I was younger that, you know, all the emphasis on what school you're going to go to, you got to start your career, you got to do this, you got to do. It was all untrue.
Yeah.
I dropped out of school 3 or 4 times. I went back to school. started jobs, got fired from jobs, did jobs. You get so many second chances. You can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, I never was one to follow a linear step-by-step path to anything. So I wish someone had told me that earlier. My parents shouldn't have told me that.
They tried to tell you?
No, they were the opposite. They were like, you got to go to a good school. You got to get this. You can't. What are you dropping out? What are you going to Brazil for?
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
The
I'll have a blast.
Yeah. The classic line, you got to have something to fall back on.
Yeah, you don't.
But it's the joke I say to people now is the kid is looking, your son or daughter look up to you and say, are you absolutely sure you won't support me for the rest of my life? Now, people my age thinks that's funny. People younger go, that's not funny, because kids seem to be more that way these days. Whereas when we were growing up, it was like, what age can I leave home? I'm ready to bust out and do my thing. Yeah.
My kids are too young to start thinking about that. So I haven't come up to that question yet. I'm sure it'll come in a couple of years.
Can you forget to die?
Can I forget to die? No. I think about it. I think about it a lot.
On what occasion do you lie?
Santa Claus?
Very good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
On the top. Everyone knows it comes off the top.
Wow, everyone. Well, 90% of people say over, and the patent says that, but 10% do say under, and they have their reason.
There's also the toilet seat up or down debate. And I'm like, 50% of the people are men, 50% of women in this house. Shouldn't it be 50% up, 50% down?
Wow, I should ask. See, I'm always interested in adding to my questions. I could add the toilet seat after the toilet paper question. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh, what would it be? Had fun, did okay. Got wet along the way.
That's a poem. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
What smell the glue? Coconut syrup wax.
Oh, yeah. They want to have some of the text in a color ink other than black. What color?
Blue.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
Oh, styrofoam and resin, and it would be out in the water somewhere.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good. A nice car?
You never had it and you never want it.
No,
and it's good.
Yeah.
That's legit. You know the answer I get the most?
What?
Fame, money, and heroin.
No. Nice cars. I've rented a nice car once and I was like, wow, this is really nice. But I've never wanted one. I've never had one, and I'll never will get one.
Yeah. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Duck.
What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Cultural shift. Oh, multiculturalism. The more, the better. Pretty easy. It's. I think living in Los Angeles, you overlook how important multiculturalism is. How diversity is so important. When then you go to a different place where it's not diverse, and it's suddenly like really remarkable. You're like, oh wow, there's all white people here. This is really strange. And you we take it for granted how diversity is fun and has better food and better music and better neighbors. So
yeah, I think it's evident you learn that by being in LA, like I have for 43 years being in Venice. But I think it's also that you took the risk or had the courage to go to other countries to surf. I mean, you could have stayed in LA and just surfed, right? But there was something, what is my basic question is, what does courage mean to you now?
I don't know if I wouldn't have thought that traveling was courageous. It was curiosity. It's when I grew up, we used to drive to Mexico on the weekends to go surfing in Ensenada and Tijuana, and as soon as we'd cross the border, it was just like being in a whole new world. And then from then on, I just kept wanting to go further and further and further, and then pretty soon I'm the other side of the planet. And there's no greater moment, I think, in life than being an expat, than just walking down the street in some other country. It's just, you never know what's going to happen, and makes life so interesting and rich.
Yeah. But there's some sort of risk, sensibility you have that you would push that. Like you go, well, now I went to Mexico, now I want to go farther, like
Yeah.
people love to find a safety zone, like that like there's a great McLuhan line that goes, carefully make plans, then do the opposite.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. In you're chalking it off as curiosity, but I think there's something deeper there, that you have some sort of risk notion, like.
Well, I mean, I don't mean constantly talk about surfing or use surfing as a metaphor, but you don't fly to a different place to go surfing to find really safe waves. You go to find really challenging waves that are bigger than you're used to and more dangerous than you're used to. So you're intentionally like seeking out to challenge yourself, I think, is
Yeah.
what makes it exciting. So maybe that's an inherent sense of what you might be calling bravery.
Right, but that's an inherent too. Is what did you get that sense of bravery more from the way your parents raised you or on your own?
On my own.
But
Uh,
what's the roots of it? Where did it come from, Sandow? That's the thing I'm trying to get to.
Adrenaline,
Yeah,
like riding your bike too fast down the hill or something.
yeah.
It feels good, and then it's dangerous, and then you just want to do a bigger hill next time.
Yeah. No, adrenaline is a great answer. Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, Anthony Burgess is a guy who wrote Clockwork Orange, who actually wrote 8 books on Joyce too. We must now ask some very different questions about the relationship between music and life. So it could be substituted between art and life. What's a question that remains unresolved for you in your pursuit as an artist?
I don't know what. I don't know what's from. I can't think of anything that's not just silly.
Yeah. No, I don't know is the answer. That's it. What question remains unresolved for you? I don't know. That's like the guy goes to the guru and he says, what's the most important question I can ask you? And the guru goes, the one you just asked me. Okay, we got 2 more and we're out of here. Thank you so much. Thornton Wilder said it. Art is in 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you, Sandow?
In my work, continuing to speak and say things that are relevant about topics that I think are interesting
Yeah.
in my life. Staying healthy and continuing and having happy moments as much as possible.
Yeah. Beautiful. Last question is, what gives you the most optimism?
I guess it's a cliche, but I would say that younger generation, hopefully, yeah, I think that the younger generation, growing up in a
Yeah.
more diverse world with more opportunities, with more knowledge, hopefully they'll make better decisions than the older people are doing.
That's the answer I get 90% of the time. Youth, younger generation. I appreciate it because this dialogue started with a question that goes, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said, the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? I got one of the last questions they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. They said, what gives you the most optimism? He says, other people. So I think it's important that we invest in realize that the younger generation is moving the project forward. Let's hope. Hopefully. Like I think you've done with your art. I really appreciate your art, and I appreciate you spending the time with me today. Sandow, thank you so much.
So thanks for having me. It's really challenging. This is not the kind of conversations I normally have.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun. I learned a lot. So I hope our dialogue can continue on forever and ever. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.